All right, before we jump in and start building, I did want to go through one more kind of theory-based lesson here, just to make sure you've got an overall map of this framework to store in your head as we work through the subsequent lessons in this section. So, starting at the very top of the framework, we are going to have the weekly planner. Again, I mentioned this previously, but it bears repeating here. The absolute bedrock of this system is the weekly review and having that ritualistic time where we come through on a weekly basis and review our work. So, everything is going to nest under this parent level heading of the weekly planner. And as you'll see as we work through this, that is going to live on the daily notes page of your Roam graph. Underneath that top level heading, we're going to have our inbox. Again, I mentioned this previously as well, but this is the idea of simply having a place where we can very quickly capture things that fly at us through the course of a busy week. We want ultra low friction. We want a place where we can just very quickly park these ideas and trust that we're going to come back and process them later. Below that, we're going to get into our context. This is basically the project specific layer of the framework. Now, why don't I just call it the projects layer? That is a good question. I like to refer to it as the context layer because, as you'll see when we work through this section, some of the things that I'm tracking in this section are indeed projects, meaning they have a defined beginning and a defined end. But other things that I track at this layer are more just general areas. So an example that we're going to go through is a leadership section. I am a leader of a small product and engineering team at work. And that's an area that I'm just continuing to try to grow and improve. So I'm not always tracking things that are specifically projects in this layer. So just I prefer to refer to it as context. But again, you can think of this layer loosely as the project layer of the framework. Beneath each context, sorry, let me back up a couple steps there. We are going to have our tasks, pretty self explanatory here. These are just the things that we're aiming to get done on that given week. And then below each task, I'll go ahead and unfurl all three of these. We're going to have next steps, log, and resources. So the next steps section, as the name implies, is just where we're going to get very specific and lay out what are the concrete, bite-sized next steps that we need to get done in order to keep that task moving forward. Beneath that, we're going to have a logging section that we use to track our progress and maintain kind of a historical record of how that task has progressed. And then beneath that, we are going to have the resources section, which is a place where we can park various pieces of information related to that task. These are going to be things like links to email or Slack threads, links to documentation, draft documents, screenshots, etc. If I move myself up out of the way here and finally get to the bottom section of this framework, we're going to talk about the up next section. As you can see, this is nested underneath our context. So each context is going to have an up next section, which is essentially just a context specific backlog. This is a place where we park tasks that we are not going to work on in the current week, but we know that these tasks are going to need to come up soon. So with this framework in mind, let's go ahead and jump in and start building.